Hello, everyone. Thank you for downloading this showcase presentation. Today's session is pre-recorded. If you have any questions about this topic, you can reach out to us at program@nonprofitlearninglab.org. If you are interested in downloading more free resources, you can check out our free resources page on the Nonprofit Learning Lab website, or you can reach out to us via email. And without further ado, I will now hand it over to you, Andrea.
Thank you. Hello and welcome. Today we'll be talking about strategic hiring, specifically in efforts of inclusion and diversity. We'll be covering today why these efforts are important, not only to be in compliance with the requirements of federal, state, county, and city laws, but also how to prioritize inclusion and diversity in your hiring processes that are extremely beneficial for nonprofits for attracting and maintaining top talent on your teams. My name is Andrea Stanley, and I run an HR support firm called Dominica. We are located in Seattle, Washington, but have clients across the nation. My business came out of my 10 plus years of experience in nonprofits and just realizing the lack of employee resources and training due to budget constraints and other barriers that are specific to nonprofits. When organizations have such limitations, safety, compliance, staff training, and really everything HR was the first to go and be forgotten about. However, nonprofits tend to have the highest regulations. They have to maintain the highest standards according to their funding. And nonprofit employees tend to need safety in HR the most due to their regular public facing work. So it's important to me to continue to provide support, training, education affordably and regularly free to break that barrier that stands in the way of the important work these folks do for our communities. And that's why I also feel so aligned with Nonprofit Learning Labs as well, which is a great resource I wish I knew about when I worked in nonprofits, but I'll continue to tell my nonprofit clients about as an available resource for them. Listed right here is my contact information and website. If you go to my website, there is a pop-up to subscribe. This is an email list I do not send spam to, but I do send my monthly free training and education to. So be free to sign up if you're interested, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions about this presentation today, want to know more, or have any HR safety related, training related matters that you want answered. I'm happy to help and become an additional resource for you and your team. So what are we going over today? First, we are going to understand and define inclusion and diversity in our hiring practices. We're going to talk about how that the legal requirements that inclusion and diversity are regulated with, the intricacies and compliance regulation in the hiring process. Hiring process key strategies, so how to create inclusion in your recruitment strategies, mitigate unconscious bias, job descriptions, interview techniques, and then we'll do a quick summary at the end. So first, it's really important to define both diversity and inclusion because they do get used interchangeably, but they are not the same. So they work hand in hand, but you can think of inclusion being the effort and a diverse workplace being the result. So what is a diverse workplace? Diversity in the workplace refers to the presence of individuals from various backgrounds, cultures, races, genders, ages, abilities, and perspectives. And then inclusion is that action of fostering environments where all individuals feel valued and respected. Inclusive practices in hiring refers to deliberate efforts made by organizations to ensure that every individual, regardless of their background, identity, or characteristics, is given equal opportunity, fair treatment, and recognition in the hiring process. It involves creating an atmosphere where diversity is not only acknowledged but celebrated, where all voices are heard, and where employees feel a sense of belonging and acceptance. Inclusive hiring practices extend beyond mere compliance with legal regulations. We're not just trying to meet the minimum standard. We are trying to encompass proactive measures to eliminate biases, stereotypes, and systematic barriers that may hinder the recruitment and advancement of underrepresented groups. So what is the importance of this? Well, by fostering inclusive hiring practices, organizations can build diverse teams with top talent that bring together a variety of perspectives, experiences, and talents, ultimately contributing to the innovation, creativity, and organizational effectiveness. Diversity fuels innovation by bringing together individuals with different, unique viewpoints, experiences, and skills. When diverse teams collaborate, they are more likely to generate innovative ideas, challenge conventional thinking, and develop creative solution to complex problems, which leads to our next point that enabling innovation is creative problem solving, right? So diversity also enhance problem solving by encouraging critical thinking, constructive debate, and multiple viewpoints. When teams consist of members with diverse backgrounds and expertise, they can analyze challenges from various angles, identify blind spots, and devise comprehensive strategies to address them. And this in turn will improve workplace culture. A diverse workforce fosters creativity by promoting a culture of openness, curiosity, and learning. Different perspectives and approaches encourage employees to think outside of the box, exploring new possibilities and experimenting with unconventional solutions. And this in turn leads to higher retention rate, which is always an issue when it comes to nonprofits. We are always struggling to reach our staff numbers, right? So an inclusive environment promotes higher levels of employee engagement by fostering a sense of belonging, trust, and mutual respect among team members. This is critical when it comes to nonprofits because oftentimes employees are not attracted to the work for pay. They are there for the mission and to become part of a team that supports this mission. And when employees feel valued, heard, and appreciated, they are more likely to be motivated, committed, and invested in their work with the organization. It is also the law. So, anti discriminatory efforts in the hiring process are required by law. Just another motivation to add these strategies to your hiring practice. When it comes to nonprofits, adequate record keeping to show these regulations are being upheld is oftentimes required. I always drive that point home to the nonprofits that I work for that you need to be record keeping for everything. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But if you are on the other end of this training today, my first step would always be to understand what legal recommendations that you have to fulfill, not just by your funding, but by federal, state, county, and city levels. It's extremely important to educate yourself on the following acronyms and entities, whether or not you are considered a federal contractor, because then you have to abide by a whole nother level of standards by the OFCCP, the Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs, and just really understanding all the intricacies of the hiring process that are under such entities as the EEOC, the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, ADA, American Disability Act, Title VII, and other relevant regulations. Understanding key compliance regulations, non-discriminatory, reasonable accommodations, and fair treatment. And then also why this is important if you ever need to talk to a stakeholder who is helping you decide how to do strategic hiring. There's so much risk if you are not in compliance. First of all and foremost is lawsuits, of course. Any candidate can also make a complaint to the EEOC and say that they were treated unfairly during their hiring process with you, and this can lead to hefty fines as well. Reputation damage. We are in an age of technology where people communicate. I know that before I owned my own business, whenever I worked for another organization, I always looked at their reviews under Glassdoor. And I looked to see what people were saying about their hiring practices. Was it too tedious? Was it unfair? And how they treated their employees. And that was an important element I used to making decisions. So something to keep in mind. There's also extreme financial penalties. We talked about some of these entities that obtain or upkeep these regulations, right? The EEOC is one. L&I, or Labor and Industries. I I know from my experience nonprofits that have received violations from L&I that have actually put their locations out of business because of how hefty the violation fees were. So it's very important. It's something to keep in mind and something we're trying to avoid. So let's talk now about some of the strategies we can do to eliminate unconscious bias and improve and support inclusion and diversity in our hiring processes. So first, we're going to talk about recruiting strategies, the first step, identifying diverse talent pools. This actually should be pretty easy for nonprofits, because nonprofits are great where they get to understand and really create partnerships within their communities. So is there a veteran office that you are in communication with down the street that you can host a table at and talk about how great it is to work at your nonprofit? Or perhaps there is a senior living community that you can go to their community center and tack something on their job board, right? So we're really trying to leverage our networks as nonprofits to diversify our candidate pool. Implementing inclusive recruiting strategies, promoting diversity in job postings, attending diversity focused events, and fostering relationships with diverse communities. We really don't want to just put our jobs online anymore, right? Because like I said, our candidates are not going to be attracted to the pay of our nonprofits. They're going to be attracted to the mission. They're going to be attracted to the team. So really representing yourself, getting out there in the community is very crucial and important to your recruiting process. Leveraging technology and platforms for diverse candidate sourcing. So the power of AI can be used now. You can use AI to write your job descriptions. I just say that with the caveat of making sure that you incorporate what is required by your state and city laws, because AI only goes to a certain year and it might not be updated with the current legislation. Diversity job boards and social media platforms. Everyone has a phone now. So not just posting your jobs on LinkedIn or Indeed, but posting your jobs everywhere. As much as you can in a variety of places would be great. Mitigating unconscious bias. This one is very important because unconscious bias exists and it may always exist. So really being aware of those in the hiring process as is. I know when I was a recruiter, I would do things like eliminate all the names from the resumes so that the manager would get a stack of resumes and they would just select candidates for the next round based on their experience only. And this is because I know that some names might be not conventional, and therefore might have stereotypes, assumptions associated to them, automatic judgment that would influence that decision making. We also want to stay clear of things like job gaps. It is 2024. That is a very outdated process. So everyone has job gaps, nearly everyone, in their resume nowadays. We are in a post-COVID climate. Over 3 million women left the workforce during COVID due to childcare, due to elder care during that time. So if you are discriminating against that very specific thing in a resume, you're discriminating against a whole group of people. People can have job gaps for a variety of reasons, military deployments, cancer, pregnancy, etc. So really being conscious of that, and really updating what you think when you look at someone's resume is very important. Training and awareness programs for decision makers. So this is very important as well. Just that ongoing education of your supervisors, the folks that do the interviews, the folks that look at the resumes, and improving their education, updating them regularly to make them aware of these unconscious biases that do exist and how to address them. Next, we have creating a job description as well. So nonprofits, most of them have specific requirements that they actually have to provide in their job description under the EEOC or the OFCCP. And then states and cities as well have requirements. So I know the state and city that I live in now requires wage transparency, which is very, very good. Being transparent in any type of job description is very good. So we really want to make sure that we're meeting those requirements. Certain states and cities also require you to post about all the benefits that you offer. Um, Creating as much clarity, transparency, and inclusivity in your job descriptions is very important. Avoiding biased language, focusing on essential job functions, and considering diverse perspectives. One organization I have worked with before have their employees using their personal vehicles to go out into the field. So prior to working with them, they had in their job description that they were requiring candidates to own a vehicle. Well, who does that discriminate? It discriminates against a specific social economic class, right? So we can't say that. So they had to remove that language from their job description and really focus on the essential job functions. There's also examples, of other discriminatory language that we can use. We just want to make sure that we're rephrasing for inclusivity and we're not leaving anyone out. Everyone has a fair opportunity to apply. Number 4 is also extremely important is we are structuring interviews, diverse interview panels, and standardizing the evaluation criteria. You should have some kind of standardized form that you're filling out, which is one, fulfills that role of record keeping, right? That we'll talk about at the end. But it also makes sure that everyone's on a level playing field when it comes to their interview. Also looking around the interview panel, does everyone look the same? Is everyone the same age? Is everyone the same gender, sex, ethnicity, etc.? Maybe getting away from that, having people in all levels of your nonprofit, having maybe like a representation of each type of employee, whether it be like a manager, someone who's a case lead, or someone who uh, is a day shift employee, a night shift employee, what have you. But having each representation there during an interview panel is great. And then strategies for minimizing bias during interviews. Understanding, having those employees that are going to partake, take some unconscious bias training, utilizing behavior-based questions only. So those are those situational-based questions. If you were in this situation, what would you do? And focus on job-related competencies. We do not want to make comments if someone comes into an interview and they are pregnant. We don't want to refer to it. We don't want to say things like, oh, you have an interesting accent. Where are you from? We do not want to say those comments at all, okay? We want to stick to the job related competencies, the job functions. If they want to divulge personal information, then you can follow up with that, like, oh, that's neat. But let's really stick to what the job requires, right? And if you are a faith-based organization, you cannot ask a candidate what their religious faith is. You can get around this by talking about that you are a faith-based organization. Here are some of your mission. Here's your mission statement. Here is your values. And if they have any questions about that, but you cannot specifically ask if they are the same religious background. And then having substantial and detailed record keeping is extremely important, and I've driven this point home about 3 times in this presentation today. But we really want to have record keeping in almost all of our processes for nonprofits, because if anything were to come out of this, anyone claims that you were being unfair during the hiring process, You can look back to your records. You can show them as evidence if it came to a lawsuit. And having that really detail-oriented record keeping of, this person did not receive this job because it requires supervisor background or experience as a supervisor. They have no experience as a supervisor, and they answered this question unclearly. It seemed like they didn't have a lot of experience, having employees or what have you. That's just an example. But really being detailed in your record keeping systems and not just putting they were not good for this job is really keen. And also a lot of times it's required by nonprofits. So that's just something to keep in mind. All right, so I know we went through a lot today, but just as a quick summary, prioritizing an inclusion and diversity in all stages of the hiring process is not only beneficial to the employer, but it will keep your organization in compliance with federal, state, and city laws. Inclusion and diversity strategies for key steps of the hiring process, including what we went through today, some recruiting efforts, job description, interview. And efforts can be helped by understanding and mitigating pre-existing bias. Once again, there's my contact information. Should you have any questions, concerns, or want to hear more about my affordable HR training and safety services, I do have a virtual training coming up. It is an active shooter response for employers. This is a life-saving training I usually do on site, but due to the demand, have created a virtual presentation for employers so that they can walk away with emergency action planning information for their teams. So thank you for taking this time to watch this training. Please feel free to look at the other training webinars and resources Nonprofit Learning Labs provides. And finally, thank you for all that you and your teams do for the communities that you serve.
Thank you, Andrea. This showcase presentation has come to an end. If you are interested in downloading more free resources, you can check out our free resources page on the Nonprofit Learning Lab website, or you can reach out to us via email at program@nonprofitlearninglab.org. Thank you all so much for participating. And again, thank you, Andrea, for educating our community.